It's the decisions we make that determine the outcome of our business. There are so many tiny little things we do every day, but it's those few big decisions that we make that determine whether we stay put, whether we decline, or whether we actually grow. And learning how to make good quality strategic decisions is one of those fundamental business skills that we all have to master. And in this video, I'm going to walk you through my process for making those big strategic decisions that are super important and you don't want to get wrong. In case you don't know me, my name is Olly. I'm the founder of StoryLearning.com, an online education business. I'm also a mentor and advisor to other people who run online education businesses. With all my processes, I always try and keep them really simple. Complexity is the enemy of good. And these are the three parts. Clarify the question, all options on the table, devote thinking time. I know they seem really simple, but it's so easy to sort of look at from the outside and say, yeah, this is obvious. But when you're in the middle of it, is when you really need simple frameworks like this. And this is step one, because so often people are solving the wrong problem. They have an intuition or a gut feel or some kind of dogma that they're sticking to, but actually they haven't got clear on what the actual question is that they're trying to solve. One of my favorite examples is a number of years back when I first started asking the question, how can I scale story learning? We were already doing 7 figures and I had got into my head that I want to scale story learning to 8 figures. And I remember talking to a mentor of mine at one point, and in fact, a few people said this to me. So, Olly, what are your plans for the business? And I said, I want to scale to 8 figures. And I remember this one guy, Phil, turned around to me and said, oh yeah? Why? And I didn't have a good answer. I said something like, I don't know, it seems like the kind of next thing to do, right? Isn't that what you're supposed to do? I was operating without really understanding what I wanted. I thought that the thing I wanted was to scale from 7 to 8 figures. But as we dug down, I realized that that wasn't actually what was important to me. For me, as you'll know if you follow me here or on my newsletter, one of the key things that I live by is I believe very strongly in a balance between business and lifestyle. I believe that your business should enable your lifestyle right now because life is short and there are things that you can do now that you can't do later. And we have to live every day. As I examined this question, I realized that the thing that I wanted to do was not to scale to 8 figures for some arbitrary reason, but rather to continue to scale my business whilst maintaining the lifestyle that I currently enjoy that enables me to sit around on a Wednesday morning making videos like this. It wasn't scale at all cost. It was continued growth, because I do believe that you need to continue to grow whilst maintaining the lifestyle that I currently have. And that was the question that needed clarifying. And as soon as I had that question clear, the actions then were dictated really easy, like dominoes in front of me, because some of the more aggressive options that might have been a more direct way to pursue scale were now off the table because I just didn't want to make that sacrifice in my life. So clarifying the question is the absolutely indispensable first step. And the best way to do this often is just to ask friends. So I have a friend, Noel, who I often call up and say, look, do you mind just helping me think through this? And I think well often by speaking out loud, much to the consternation of my friends who have to sort of put up with it. But I know that by just running through, expressing my thoughts to somebody, it kind of helps me get it straight in my own mind. So I often call up Noel and say, hey, can I just talk at you for a bit? And he's great at asking questions and listening, and it helps me clarify the question. And you can use that phrase, can you help me clarify my question? And you might be surprised how powerful that is. The second thing then is to get all options on the table. My friend Josh once told me this, and it's one of the greatest things I've ever learned. There is no decision to be made until you have at least 3 options on the table. A great example of this happening recently was a few years back, again in story learning, when we had run into a bit of a tech limitation. The tech stack we were using for our marketing was just causing us growing pains. There were lots of things that we weren't able to do. We just had all these limitations. And so we basically decided to burn down and rebuild our marketing stack from scratch. And we were kind of all set on this path that we thought was going to be the best path. But then I paused and I said to my team, look, I'm just going to go and ask for a few more options in this entrepreneur group that I'm in. So I went and posted on the forum and said, hey, we're thinking about rebuilding our marketing stack. What are the options I should be thinking about? I got hit with a barrage of options I'd never even considered. There were at least 4 or 5 completely different paths to approaching this problem that I hadn't even thought of. I didn't even realize, for example, that you could get like a CTO consultant type person who can kind of consult on tech decisions. It's never really crossed my mind. We had a bunch of, it was more than 3, it was about 5 options on the table. And that completely reframed how we went about approaching this problem and ended up taking a different path. It was one of the options that we were given from this forum. That would not have happened if I hadn't A, clarified the question, and B, gone out and got as many options as possible on the table. Which brings us to number 3. devote thinking time. See, even when you get a bunch of options on the table, that's not to say that the decision is easy. And you know this, when you face a difficult decision, you could have some really good options in front of you, but it's still not completely clear to you which you should take. And this is where thinking time comes in. As entrepreneurs, we have a very strong tendency to go dive in, take action, just run the clock down as quickly as possible. But actually, with these big decisions that affect the future of the business, it's the thinking time, the ability to think and properly think through the question that's going to determine the outcome. And so I really make sure to devote thinking time once I've clarified the question, got my options on the table, some real thinking time where I have one focused question. And the purpose of that time is not to kind of just go for a walk or just daydream, but actually to solve this particular problem, answer this question. There are 3 ways that I tend to process this thinking time. And for me personally, it's morning walks, quiet thinking time, and journaling. So I'm going to talk you through these because understanding what works best for you is really important. So morning walks, I go on an hour walk through the hills of Hobbitshire every single morning. I do it at 7 a.m, 6:15, make my coffee, do some stuff, head out of the door about 7 a.m, and back home by 8 o'clock. That gives me an hour of thinking time. In the winter, it's pitch black and I'm wearing a head torch. In the summer, it's glorious. But that 1 hour is really useful. And I first discovered this in COVID, where I was kind of cooped up and got into this habit of the morning walk. And I found that as long as I leave my phone at home and don't listen to podcasts or audiobooks, but actually say to myself, I want to think about X problem during this 1 hour, I would find that there was not a single problem anywhere in my business that could not be solved after 1 week of morning walks. So basically 5 or 6 walks in the morning where I had one thing to think about, this particular topic. It's amazing how moving and thinking and focus can actually help you clarify your options. The key is you've got to avoid what Cal Newport calls mental loops or thought loops or whatever it is. You've got to stay focused on answering the question, which is why leaving your phone at home is so important. But once you've clarified the question, got your options on the table, morning walks are a fantastic way to devote thinking time. The other way you can do this is with quiet thinking time, and there's a great book called The Road Less Stupid that is completely dedicated to quiet thinking time. And the idea is that in your schedule, you will carve out a specific time, you'll put it in your calendar, say 45 minutes or so, and you will literally plonk yourself down in a chair with no distractions, and he even suggests putting your head in your hand, but you have one challenge, one task for those 45 minutes, which is to think about the problem that you've set yourself. And so once you've got your options on the table, you can just sit down quietly, do nothing but think about that problem, and you'd be amazed. I mean, how often do you do that? I realized when I read The Road Less Stupid that I just literally never do that. When do you sit down with nothing other than one task to think? It's just not something we do. And yet carving out that quiet thinking time is exactly how we solve difficult problems. Again, the entrepreneur brain is not conducive to slowing down and weighing up different decisions. And so just carving out specific thinking time is super important. The last thing is journaling. I have a love-hate relationship because I find it takes a lot of time, but it's one of the most powerful thought processing thinking tools that I've ever come up with. And currently I'm doing 15 minutes of journaling every morning. I find it so useful to get ideas from my head onto paper. There's something about that process that just allows your brain to process the information as you're transcribing it from your brain onto paper. And so journaling, again, about that specific question can help you clarify your thoughts very, very effectively. So these are the 3 things. You've got morning walks, you've got quiet thinking time, and journaling. That is how you get the thinking done and make the right decision. So these are the 3 parts. Clarify the question, get all options on the table, and devote thinking time. There was one particular example I can think of. It was on a morning walk that I did this, that I devoted my thinking time. And it was during a part of the growth of story learning where we were a limit of our knowledge. We were operating from kind of at the limitations of our marketing knowledge. And we knew that we had to upskill ourselves or bring in new, fresh, upgraded knowledge in order to continue to grow. And I had this choice between bringing in an external team, either through consultants or hiring a marketing team, versus upskilling the existing team. 2 very, very different approaches with very, very different consequences. And at first I was leaning towards the external route because I felt it was the right time for us. But then after devoting proper thinking time to it, I realized, again, because I'd clarified the question, which in my case was again related to my goals of wanting to continue to grow the business in line with my lifestyle and not to compromise that by piling too much pressure or stress or burden on the team. I realized that actually having our people be motivated, be upskilled, be wanting to continue themselves, evolving proactively was the best way to keep people, to incentivize the long-term growth of the team and of the company. And so for that reason, I decided on putting our resources into upskilling our existing team rather than bringing in the kind of external heavy hitter A-player type people. And that ended up being a fantastic decision, but it could only happen because I'd clarified that question about what exactly it was that I wanted. So this is how you make better strategic decisions. If you'd like to hear more from me, then a few things. First of all, like this video and subscribe to the channel. That helps YouTube know it should deliver more of them to you. You can also subscribe to my email newsletter at ollyrichards.co, where I send out newsletters about strategies for scaling online education businesses. And when you do that, you also get a free copy of my case study, Anatomy of a $10 million Online Education Business. It's huge, about 117 pages. A lot of people really, really like this, and it shows you exactly how my business works in exhaustive detail so that you can copy those strategies and steal them for yourself. Now, earlier in the video, I mentioned this question of hiring external A players versus upskilling your team. And I have this theory that you should not hire A players. And in this video over here, I'm going to tell you exactly why I think that and why you should factor this into your decisions when you are next hiring that important role within your business.